You ever get that feeling like you're a stranger in your own life? It's a feeling that's super common, but man, it is hard to put your finger on. Well, today, we're giving it a name: alienation. And we're going to dive into what some of history's greatest minds had to say about it. It's a really weird feeling, right? That sense of disconnect, like you're just watching your life play out from the cheap seats, even when you're in a crowded room or buried in work. And this feeling is so powerful, so universal, that thinkers from totally different worlds, philosophers, economists, even psychologists, they all took a crack at figuring out what it means and where it comes from. So what is it? At its core, alienation is that feeling of being cut off, separated from the very things that are supposed to make us, well, human. Our work, our world, even ourselves. And to really get it, we're going to follow the path laid out by three absolute giants: Hegel, Marx, and Freud. All right, first step, George Hegel. Now, for Hegel, this feeling, it wasn't about your job or politics. Nope. It was something way deeper, something spiritual. He saw it as this painful but kind of necessary step in the journey of consciousness itself. Hegel breaks it down into a two-part process. First, what he called objectification. The human spirit just has to create things, art, history, ideas. It pours itself out into the world. But then, and this is where it gets weird, we look at the very world we created and it suddenly feels foreign, like it's not ours anymore. That's self-estrangement. So for Hegel, it goes like this. It all starts inside of us, in our consciousness. Then, that consciousness pours itself out, creating our world. But then, here's the kicker. A rift forms. We start to see the world we made as something separate from us. And the result? What he famously called the unhappy consciousness. And listen, this isn't just about having a bad day. It's a profound split. It's that gut-wrenching feeling when you see this huge gap between the person you think you should be and the messy reality of your actual life. It doesn't just cut you off from yourself, it separates you from other people too. So how do we fix this? Is there a way out? For Hegel, the answer was spiritual and philosophical. Through deep thought, we can start to see ourselves reflected in the world again. And through ideas like the divine existing within the human, we can finally bridge that gap and feel at home again. Okay, so that's Hegel. Now let's jump to our next thinker, Karl Marx. And Marx, well, he basically took Hegel's lofty spiritual idea and dragged it kicking and screaming right down to the factory floor. Yeah, Marx fundamentally disagreed with Hegel's whole premise. He said, hold on, this isn't some inevitable spiritual crisis. For him, alienation is a direct product of the way we've organized society, specifically a society built on private property and working for a wage. For Marx, this system flips everything upside down. As he so powerfully put it, human life is seen only as a means, whereas objects are seen as ends. Just think about that. We become the tools, and the things we make become the whole point. And he got super specific, breaking it down into 4 key types of alienation. First, you're alienated from the product you make. You put one tiny screw in a car you'll never own. Second, from the act of production itself. It's not creative expression, it's just boring forced labor. Third, all of this disconnects you from your very human essence, your creativity, what he called your species being. And finally, you're alienated from other people because you're forced to compete with them for survival. At the heart of all this is the difference between use value and exchange value. Look, use value is the joy a carpenter gets building a table for his own family. But exchange value is just what that table is worth on the market. When you only produce for exchange value, that personal connection is just gone. The thing you made isn't a part of you anymore. It's just a commodity. So if the system is the problem, what's Marx's solution? Well, it's a big one. He argued that the only way to truly end alienation is to radically change the system. For him, that meant abolishing private property, so that people could finally reclaim their work, their products, and their own humanity. So we've gone from the spiritual to the economic. Now, for our final guide, we turn inward. With Sigmund Freud, we find that the source of alienation isn't in the heavens or the factory, but deep inside the battleground of our own minds. For Freud, it all starts with a massive conflict. On one side, you've got our raw instincts and desires, the primal, vital core of who we are. And on the other side, you've got civilization's demands, all the rules and roles and expectations we have to follow to get along in society. And that forces a brutal trade-off. To fit in, to be civilized, We have to push down or repress those primal instincts. According to Freud, the price we pay for civilization is a deep internal alienation. We literally become strangers to the truest parts of ourselves. So we've got the spiritual, the economic, and the psychological. How do these classic ideas help us make sense of our lives today? Well, they're all pointing toward one common modern struggle: the search for authenticity. Later thinkers started mashing these ideas together. They described modern people as being alienated in both ways. And doesn't that sound familiar? We're pressured to build a personal brand, to market ourselves on social media like a product. We become the commodity, not the author of our own lives. Ultimately, the fight against alienation isn't just about fighting against something bad. It's a fight for something. It's a search for authenticity, for self-realization. It's that deep desire to live a life that feels truly our own, where what we do on the outside matches who we are on the inside.
So, let's bring it all home. For Hegel, the cause was a spiritual rift, and the solution was understanding. For Marx, the cause was alienated labor, and the solution was revolution. And for Freud, the cause was the clash with civilization, and the path forward was psychological insight. 3 brilliant thinkers, 3 totally different diagnoses for the same fundamental human problem.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. We have more tools for connection than at any other point in history. Our phones, social media, the global economy, they all promise to bring us closer. So the question we're left with is, in a world that is so constantly connected, why do so many of us still feel so profoundly separated?